Hey, Christy Mattoon here with MindRewire. I'm so glad to be here with you today, coming to you from my living room. I'm super excited to do this. I'm actually making a little series for you on subconscious stress and the emotions that get trapped in your body. But if you like MindRewire, I want you to go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you hit that little thing and subscribe, and then click the bell if you want notifications. This is going to be about a six-part series or so before we jump into something else that's going to entail epigenetic influence. We're going to talk about all different levels of the body, from the body physicality, spirit, mind, soul. We're going to talk about the chemicals of stress and what they actually do inside your body and how that translates to the outside world. And then the subconscious, how it locks into the chemicals of stress and how you replay that over and over and over. We'll be talking about all of these things. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining me here on MindRewire. All right, so today I'm talking about the epigenetic influence of stress. In our series, we're detailing how stress and how subconscious stress specifically can take a person out. It'll make you feel things like self-sabotage, things like you're not worthy, all the way to huge things like actual symptoms in your body. So we're going to be detailing how that all happens. So on the epigenetic end of it, first of all, what is epigenetics? Epigenetics is basically the science of how your environment influences your body. It's the science of how everything around you comes together and it influences you on a cellular level. And we have way more control of this than we were ever led to believe. So we want to understand this a little bit more. And if you've read books from the likes of like Dr. Bruce Lipton and some of those kind of guys, you've probably got a really good basis for this. But I want to give you a few exercises and different ways that you can start to play with your own system and remove some of the issues of subconscious stress, but from an epigenetic angle, so from an environmental angle. All right, so we want to talk about the environment as an influence on your system, and we hear about this all the time. And if you were a kid that came out of the 80s and we were playing the video games when they first came out, we heard about it all the time. The rock and roll music, right, was really big, and it was kind of new at that point. But the conversation was, what is it doing to our minds, right? Because there was an effect that was going on that you could see in people across the globe, right, and across our country specifically. What was happening in an epigenetic influence in this kind of a situation is when you're listening to or watching something repeatedly over and over that's violent, that's angry, that gives you a negative message, you take that in on a cellular level. It impacts you genetically. It can flip switches on and on. It can lock you into places where you're constantly in fight and flight. If you've seen a repeated bad scene or something repeated, that's been very violent over and over, it'll either mute your system from it and you just kind of turn off to it so it doesn't really affect you at all, or it revs you up to a level where every time something like that happens, you get really nervous and scared. So it's sending you into a fight and flight state, probably on a low level without you even realizing it. What that does inside your body is send off chemicals and alarms, right? We're going to be talking more about that in the second part. But you have to think about on an experiential level, with all of the stuff around you in your environment, what are you putting into your system? So we want to take this apart from kind of piece by piece. And then what's it doing to you? And what are you expecting? Right? You can't really expect to be in good health just because you're sitting on your couch dreaming about being in good health, or really like thinking it or doing your affirmations. There's more to it than just that piece, because we are so highly influenced by all the stuff around us, particularly the chemicals and the like the GMOs in our food, right? That kind of stuff will influence you no matter how strong your affirmation is. So let's talk about the body part of this first, the physical body. What kind of environment are you putting your body in? So now we are talking about food. What are you putting inside your system? And you can think of it like fuel and information. That's what I usually teach people when we start talking about this stuff. Because if the food you're putting in your body isn't good fuel or information, the environment's not right. What is your body signaling into your system from the food that you're giving it? If you're giving your body information on a cellular level and it's taking that information and it's wrong information, right? So you're giving it a chemical instead of giving it something that it can actually use that'll give you a good output. So you got to think about that. You got to think about it as an environment that you're giving inside your body, and it's totally under your control. You control, you choose, you decide. What do I put in this thing? What am I going to fuel the machine with? Because at the end of the day, the output you're getting is based on what you put in, right? So think about that from a spirit standpoint. What are you feeding your spirit with? And there's this great old tale about two wolves. I think I've heard it from many different aspects, but from like an American Indian aspect, where there's two wolves. And one's a good wolf and one's a bad wolf. And at the end of the day, the story basically says, which one did you feed? Because the one that you feed is the one that's going to get stronger. With your spirit, that's exactly right. What are you feeding your spirit with? Are you giving it good fuel and information, something to grow with, something to feel good about? Or are you constantly sending information to your spirit that drags it down, right? That makes you feel bad, that keeps you... And this is where the subconscious part of this can come in. Because if subconsciously you're just getting information that you don't even really, you're not aware of, you're not too sure that where that's coming from, that's the stuff that I come in with you and we can help knock that out real quick. But I'm going to teach you some ways that you can start to soften it up for yourself easily. So information, what are you feeding your spirit? On a genetic kind of level, you got to wonder, what did your granddad feed his spirit? What was your dad feeding his spirit? What was your mother feeding her spirit? And where were the genetic switches flipped on and off? And that happens with food too. We know that happens with food. What was flipped on and off that you ended up with? Because it's totally reversible within the right environment. If you change the environment, you're going to get a different expression. You can give yourself a different expression. You can give your children and your grandchildren a different expression. And that's huge, right? Especially if you feel like you got a bum rap. Let's talk about your brain for a second. The environment that you put your brain in. What are you allowing? What are you looking at? What are you listening to? What are you allowing inside your brain? And if it's crammed full of stuff, what are you not allowing out of your brain? So I've talked about this before, and I actually wrote about it in one of my books, that look at your brain like a garage. You just bought a new house, totally empty garage, and you're like all excited. You get your cars in there, and you start parking your cars in there, but then you start stacking some stuff in a corner. And then pretty soon, over a couple of years, that stacked box in the corner turns into like a couple rows of stuff or a big, huge pile of stuff. And then another couple of years, and all of a sudden you can't get one car in the garage. And then another couple of years, and that side's spilling over to the other side, and now you can't get your van in the garage. It sounds like I know that happened to us, right? So I remember this. If you don't stop and clean the garage at some point, you'll never get anything else in it. Pretty soon you can't pull the door down, or if you do pull it down, if you put it back up, everything's going to fall out, right? And we don't want that to happen. So as far as the brain goes, the environment that you leave your brain in from day to day, right? We're talking about mitigating and even controlling your own circumstance by getting rid of day-to-day stress before it piles up and dumps into the next day and turns into a huge mess, right? That's something that we're going to actually play with in this series. So we want you to be in a place where you do not have to keep carrying the day-to-day stress with you into the next day. Even if it's an ongoing circumstance, you can calm the system down and train it to stay calm through an issue, which is actually how people keep themselves from getting sick. It's very cool and interesting. All right, so let's think about environment. We talked about body, spirit, brain. Let's talk about your soul. What is the definition of the soul? From where I come from, the definition of the soul is let's see, what is a definition of soul? It's mind, body, and something else. And I'm not going to think of it right now. It's not spirit. Spirit's different. It's mind, body, and will. Your will is part of your soul. Did you know that? So it's your mind, your body, and your will. As a conglomerate, as a big, huge functioning thing all together, what are you feeding your soul? From the food supply, because if you're feeding your stuff, nourishing stuff into your physical body, your mind's going to engage with that. Right? Your will comes into action because you're using your will to make these decisions. You choose, you decide every day, you pick. And instead of pulling it all apart and using them as separate functions, when they all come together and is used as one function and your soul operates in alignment, where you're picking things that are in alignment with what you need for your life instead of like throwing it all to the wind and just hoping it comes out right, all of a sudden you can feed your soul. You can actually use the environment to give your soul the things it needs that'll make it feel good and stay in a place where it operates better. So think about that. What are you feeding your soul? How about your heart? Heart's an interesting one because we think of heart as a muscle that circulates our blood around, which is exactly what it does. But your heart also has, I'm not going to think of the word for it, but it has neural connections, right? It has its own little brain in it. It's your heart brain. And this little brain actually has attachments. It has neural pathways back up to your physical brain. Right? So there's pathways in your brain. There's pathways from your heart to your brain. And if we can get those two reconnected, life turns out into a whole different thing, right? All of a sudden, things just open up for you. So my question is, what are you feeding your heart? What kind of environment are you surrounding your heart with? From a physiological level, meaning the chemicals that your body produces, are you keeping it surrounded in good chemicals or bad chemicals? From an outside influence kind of thing, what kind of people are you allowing into your life? What kind of people are you surrounding your heart with? That's an interesting question because that's where the heart gets food from, is from your experience with the people around you. Is it damaging? Does it make you crazy? Is it painful? Have you tried to find people that were on a different level? So when you start talking about this kind of stuff and you're thinking, wow, I have to change a lot of things in order to get myself into a place where this existence is what I want it to be, right? We're looking at it in little pieces and parts. Here's the truth of the matter. If you don't like where your life is at and you're struggling, and some of it's probably subconscious stress, which we can take care of and definitely help you with, the other part of it's just the stuff you're surrounding yourself with. Right? It's the stuff in your environment. It's the stuff that you were taught to bring into your environment. It's the stuff that your grandparents did, your parents did, right? The family, I don't even know, all around you did. And it's the way you decide to change it and build it into something that works for you. That's in truth, that's in the will of God, that's in the will of, some people say the will of the universe, right? That puts you on that path that'll move you forward into what's next and into bigger and better things. Okay? So here's what I want you to do. Here's your exercise for this session. I want you to take the time to take these apart one at a time. So the body, the spirit, the brain, the soul, which is your mind, will, and emotions. So kind of as a huge piece. You're going to take them apart and you're going to put it together here. Your heart. And then also, let's take a thought, let's put people in here too. I want you to put that as a separate thing and really think about the kind of people you surround yourself with. Now, sometimes we don't have a choice, but the way you present in front of those people will determine how they act around you. Did you know that? If you can keep yourself held up at a higher level, all of a sudden it's like a barrier, and people that are crummy don't even want to be around you, right? They'll make their way away eventually and they won't even come around. So put people too. And what I want you to do is I want you to take the time to sit down and just really write it out. Write down body. What am I feeding my body with? What environment do I put my body in? Do I soak my body in chemicals that I clean my house with? Is my body wearing clothes, right, that do something positive for me, that benefit me? How about your spirit? What are you surrounding your spirit with that gives you spiritual food? What does that look like? How does it make you feel? Write all these things down. Your brain, what kind of environment do you surround your brain with? Some of this stuff can get really interesting because when you really stop and start thinking about it, it'll make you go like, whoa, what am I doing? Changing who you are in this reality and getting yourself into a place where you're in alignment, right? We always talk about that. You want to be in alignment. What does that mean? It basically means you have to change your personality, because who you are as a person right now, if these kind of things are changed, will not be the person who's standing there tomorrow. It'll be a different person. You'll act different. You'll feel different. People will feel different to you. You'll feel different to people. That's how, we attract people, and we can chase people away just by the way we feel. Have you ever stood next to somebody? This is a good example. Just stood next to somebody that really felt creepy and you were just repulsed by it. You didn't want to be there. There's a reason you felt that way. It had something to do with the chemicals and the feeling that person was giving off, right? And if you picked up on it, it's a good sensory device. One of the things I want you to know as you're going through this, I want you to take the time to do this exercise to start with. But as we're going through this, what this is going to do is allow you to become more aware of the stuff around you. So do this over the course of a couple of days even. Have a little notebook or something with you and just start noticing. And when you notice something in your environment that you feel is toxic or isn't feeling good, write it down. Even start to think of ways you can counter it, right? Things like, some of the easy stuff, right? Like your food supply. Find clean food supply, meaning stuff that doesn't have GMOs, doesn't have chemicals, doesn't have dyes, right? Stuff that isn't polluted. That's kind of an easy thing to do. Go walk through the grocery store and see what's bad for you or what's chemically laden and what's organic, what's good for you. You can actually, sit there and pick up the food and hold on to it. And you can ask it, are you going to help me or are you going to hurt me? I do this all the time. If I'm in a place where I have to eat something and I'm not really sure, I'll just hold the food for a second and ask, are you going to help me or are you going to hurt me? And if I feel for 1 second like it's not going to do something good in my body, I put it down. I won't eat it. I'll take a fast for a meal any day over eating something that I feel is like going to hurt my system. So start engaging in this manner. This is the first part of this. I'll be back in tomorrow, and we will be talking about the chemicals of stress and how that relates to all of this. So these are actually all the chemicals that are produced inside your body. So come back tomorrow, and I'll see you then. Remember to go ahead and subscribe. Subscribe to Mind Rewire for me, and also ding that bell for notifications. Blessings and peace.